Greetings people of YouTube, and today I am very excited to be taking a look at the Transformers Studio Series Gamer Edition number 3, Optimus Prime. On the day that this figure was announced, I had no Optimus Prime figures yet, so I was really looking forward to for this to be my first one, but then, this review happened and all that stuff. But I'm still really glad to have this thing. And as always, for those of you who don't know, this version of Optimus Prime comes from the War for Cybertron video games, which I unfortunately have never played. But hey, even though I haven't played the games, that doesn't mean I can't appreciate the designs, right? Seriously, this game has some of my favorite Transformers designs in the whole series. I mean, look at those Dinobots, Hasbro, please make a figure of them. And Optimus Prime here does look pretty cool as well. As we take a closer look at the packaging, you can see a really badass artwork of Optimus Prime here. As you can see, this is a 03 because this is a subline of the Studio Series, just like the 86 line. Turn it over to this side, you can see another picture of Optimus Prime right here. On the back, some product shots like usual. On this side, another artwork of Optimus Prime. And we get this whole video game controller D-pad kind of motif, and I really like this as well. Flip it over to the top, you can see the Transformers War for Cybertron title card. Flip it over to the bottom, which is, So let's start waiting any further. I can't wait to open this thing! And here is the Studio Series Gamer Edition 03 War for Cybertron Optimus Prime out of its packaging. Now, I'm really sorry if I seem like overly positive in this channel, but my gosh, this thing is amazing! This is a great representation of an already fantastic design. And the fact that they've upgraded this character into a Voyager class as opposed to the original Deluxe class that was released for the old toy line for the War for Cybertron games. And it just shows, I mean, this guy is buff! Alright then, let's stop dilly-dallying and get straight into the figure itself. I usually talk about the figure's accessories early in the bulk of my review, but the accessories for this figure are just a little bit special. So I'm gonna start this review off by taking a closer look at the details. And I believe that the buffness of this Optimus Prime figure was not exaggerated. The in-game model looks just as swole and badass as this figure right here. Though I do have some proportional issues. I think this whole armpit area is a little too wide, making the forearms look a little too short in the process. Overall though, this figure pretty much looks spot on to the in-game model. And I think that has helped quite tremendously by the fact that the in-game designs aren't as complicated as the movie designs, so the designers don't have to put in as much work in terms of engineering and sculpting and all that stuff. But because the design is not as complicated doesn't mean it's not as great. I personally love how blocky this design is. Really reminds me a lot of the G1 Optimus Prime design, but with some added details that will indicate this comes from a more modern media. And I really don't know what it is about it, but these wheels here on the back look really cool to me. This is the type of kibble that is embedded within the design and makes it even more memorable instead of kibbles that bring the figure down. And even the back on this figure, whilst it may not look 100% accurate to the games, it certainly does not distract from things, especially when you look at the figure from a dead front perspective. I mean, I guess these side pieces can be a little distracting, but I personally don't really think so. It really does come down to personal preference, I guess. Taking a good look at the head sculpt, I think this looks great. Very much heavily inspired by the G1 design, yet still having some creative liberties that is new to this particular design, such as these almost overly long antennas and the triangular shaped chin. His chest windows are also triangular, and again, that is another really cool update from the G1 design. And as we continue on to the lower half of the design, there's nothing much of note here, nothing is too great, nothing is overly terrible, it is all pretty nice. We do get some nice silver paint apps here though. And of course, we still get the classic Optimus Prime look with the wheels hidden in the calves. And these calves might look a little clunky at first, but the posability on these, along with the rest of the figure, are still pretty great. The figure has a ball joint at the head, which is not as restricted as my previous Optimus Prime. Obviously can look side to side, moves up that far, moves down that far, decent head pivot. The shoulders can rotate 360 degrees. They move outward this much, but if you use the click for the transformation, they can move slightly past that. And one of my favorite point of articulation that is not even an official point of articulation, if you pull this piece out for the transformation, you'll get a butterfly joint which will help tremendously in terms of posing with the axe. I'll demonstrate that more in the accessory segment. Anyways, moving this back in. He's got a bicep swivel, 90-degree elbow bend, slightly past 90 on this side. Wrist swivels that don't go 360, but it's still okay. Waist swivel. His hips can move forward that far, can move back about that far. That's really not as good.
Forgot about discipline.
Thigh rotation. Side note, I think the hollowness here is a little annoying, but I can't really do much about that. Single joint at the knee. Ankles move down that far. Up, not at all. And of course, a great ankle pivot. If you combine the articulation of this figure along with the staggering amount of display options for the accessories, you're gonna get lost taking pictures and posing this thing. But before we get into the accessories, why don't we get into the size comparisons? Firstly, here's Optimus Prime next to my previous review, the Transformers Studio Series 05 Revenge of the Fallen Voyager class Optimus Prime. This figure might look a little too short for an Optimus Prime, which was also a concern that I had after seeing the promotional images. But trust me, what he lacks for in height, he absolutely makes for in width. And out of the two, I gotta say I slightly prefer the Gamer Edition figure. Here he is next to the Earthrise Megatron. Is it just me or has he gotten really yellower? And I think these two are going to complement each other adequately. This until the new Megatron's release. Ooh. Comparing him to a 6-inch scale figure, we have the Marvel Legends Mr. Knight. And now the part of the comparison where it gets a little more spicy. Comparing him to some other video game based figures, here we have the Revoltech Monster Hunter Tigrex, along with the Hunter and the Palico for good measure. A miscellaneous Lunala figure from, I wanna say, Takara Tomy. I don't know, it's been quite a while since I've seen the box for this thing. Here he is next to the Figma The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword Link, and the Figma Twilight Princess Link. Now let's get to my favorite part of the figure, which is the accessories. As always, like most Studio Series figures, you get a backdrop accessory with this figure as well. Nothing much of note here other than the fact that the bottom of the backdrop is now a shade of white instead of the red that we usually get with the movie Studio Series figures. Now that we're done with this, let's throw this off to the side and focus on some more relevant accessories. My least favorite of which being this Matrix of Leadership. And for how small it is, it actually has a lot of sculpted and painted detail. Gotta love the shade of gold that they used here. This is really vibrant. As good as this Matrix may look, it does kind of fall apart when it comes to the functionality of it. You want to take the Optimus figure, open up his chest, and you're just gonna want to plug this in, just like so. And that is it. Because this figure features no articulated fingers, there is absolutely no way you could get this Matrix into this figure's hand. The closest thing to a cool pose you're gonna get with the Matrix is if you get the figure into something like this. But even then, again, the hands aren't grasping the chest window, so it does look a bit weird. I'm still really glad that they included the Matrix, as it is essential to the character of Optimus Prime. And now we get to the fun stuff. For some firepower, you get Optimus Prime's iconic Ion Blaster. This is a great reimagining of a classic weapon. And whilst the sculpting is pretty good, it is missing some red accents, which does kind of make this look a little bland, but I can kind of look past that honestly. And integrating this weapon into the figure is actually quite interesting. Instead of putting this on top of the armor or anything silly like that, you want to actually pop off the figure's forearm. This only works with the right forearm, by the way. And you'd want to peg that hole there into this stump of an arm. Here. And this just looks great. My only problem with the way that this blaster is attached is that if you want to store this forearm, you'll have to plug it into... There's a little peg here that's gonna plug into his... You won't really notice it from every angle, but there are some times when it does stick out like a sore thumb. But if that happens, you can kind of rotate this off to the side so it can kind of fit your needs. And fortunately, it does not hinder any of the articulation. I'm gonna put the forearm back on and bring in my favorite accessory, which is this axe. This axe is large and is full of presence, and it only amplifies what is already a really cool figure. Sculpt-wise, the handle is pretty average, but the axe itself looks great. A lot of etched-in Cybertronian hieroglyphs there, I really like that a lot. The paint does look kind of underwhelming upon first glance, but I do believe this is game accurate. I think I've seen a cutscene of it. But if you have more knowledge than me, please let me know in the comment section below. And just like its wielder, this axe is More than meets the eye. Whew, that's sick. I don't really know the relevance of it having two modes. Maybe one is more accurate to cutscenes and the other one is more accurate for gameplay. Again, if you know anything, please let me know in the comments. And integrating this axe into the figure is my favorite part of it. You can make Optimus hold this in so many different ways and it's so cool. The default way, as shown in the instructions, you want to take off this bottom cap and attach this section into his hand. There you go. And attach this piece back on. This already looks so freaking cool. But if you want him to double hand this thing, which I do, you want to extend this shoulder, and using the butterfly joint, you can make him double-handed. If that ain't the epitome of badassery, I don't know what is. And there are some other configurations on how he can hold the axe. I'll show some images right now. One slightly unfortunate thing about these weapons is that I could not really find any storage for them. But for me, it's absolutely fine because I'm more than likely to display him with his weapons on. Right, now that we're done with the robot mode, let's finally get to the transformation. And here's Optimus Prime in his pretty cool looking alien-esque looking truck mode. I really like the design of this thing. It's somewhat similar from what you would expect from an average truck, but the closer you look at it, the more it kinda looks like an AI drawing. It kinda invokes a sense of uncanny valleyness that I do quite like in my alien-esque designs. The figure itself, however, whilst looks good and is pretty accurate to the design, has a major issue. We'll get to that later. Now let's take a closer look at this thing. The painting and sculpting are pretty simple, but it is effective enough in my opinion. The hubcaps are actually painted silver, so that's pretty cool. And if you look at the front of the thing, you can see some hollow gaps. A little annoying if you really focus on it, but most of the time it's not really that distracting. And I also love how big and blocky it is. So satisfying to hold, and overall it's a pretty satisfying looking alt mode, but there is I mean, would it have killed him if they had engineered some kind of flap over here to cover up this whole nonsense? And it especially hurts this time because in the game I know that you're looking at your character from their back, and if you're trying to do the same here, you're not really gonna get a good view out of it. But other than that, I think this alt mode does its job reasonably well. And in terms of weapon storage, you wanna peg these two tabs here into the truck bed, like so. And for the axe, you pretty much wanna do the same thing. Yep. The weapon storage for the truck mode is a bit of a mixed bag. The axe here does look pretty haphazardly tacked on, so I just like to remove it. But having the ion blaster at the back of the truck actually is accurate to the game from my knowledge. And yeah, overall it's a decent truck mode, rolls really well. Let's get on to the next size comparison. Here's Optimus Prime next to Megatron, Beaver's Optimus Prime, Mr. Knight, and finally, the same Lego truck from the last video. And there goes my review for the Transformers Studio Series 03 Gamer Edition War for Cybertron Voyager Class Optimus Prime fig. This figure totally blew me away. I was pretty much already expecting good things from this figure, but man, after handling it, I can say that all of my expectations were blown out of the water. If you are a fan of the Cybertron games or just of Transformers in general and you don't have the old deluxe version of this design yet, then I highly recommend getting this figure. The Voyager class price point might seem a little steep considering how short this thing is, but its width, mass, and the amount of accessories do make up for it. I hope you all enjoyed this review. If you do, please do leave a like and share this video with a friend. And if you haven't, I highly recommend hitting that subscribe button, as I actually do have a couple of reviews planned. With all that being said, I'll see you all next time. Bye bye!